Bam. What a terrible shot. Let me try to fix this. All right, that's better. Alrighty then. Good to see you all. Hope everybody's well. Let's give ourselves about a good 60 seconds. Let a bunch of people jump on. All right, so I got a bunch of questions sent to me. If any of you guys are interested in having me address a question that you have, feel free to write it in the comments. Let's get right down to it. I'm going to start off with my my buddy. I'll call him Irish Paul. I'm always hesitant to sort of shout people's names out. But he sends me a message and he says, "Hey MC, I appreciate you sharing your power in recent YouTube live streams. Got a question for you. It would be great if you could share some of your experience. I'm about to become a father, and I've been leveling up mentally in preparation for the role of mentoring my future kids. How do you explain all the lunacy which has become the social norm these past few months in a way which your kids will understand and which empowers them to resist socially weaponized weakness? As always, thanks for being..." All right, then he says a bunch of cool stuff. Well, thanks for the question, Irish Paul. I will say that first and foremost, kudos to you. Congratulations to you and the family. It's always good when strong people are having children because it moves society in the proper direction, the direction of strength, that is. Now, he says, "I'm about to become a father, and I've been leveling up mentally in preparation for the role of mentoring my future kids." Good on you. It's good that you're even conscious of these things. One of the things that I think makes that people make a mistake doing when they're about to have children is they wait until they think they're ready, right? And, I have 4 kids, and there is no, when you're ready. I guess your biology tells you when you're technically ready. Everything else is just leveraging things as best as you can. So when strong people are having kids, it's always a good thing. Those of you that are strong and you are on the fence about, is now the time to bring kids into this world, or I want to be able to afford them, like, it's all nonsense. That's absolutely all nonsense. I will tell you from experience, you're never going to be ready by that criteria because there's no standard that you're following. It's all going by, when the doubt goes away, when the nerves go away. That doesn't happen. So strong people need to have kids. They need to have a lot of kids. Now he asked, how do you explain all the lunacy which has become the social norm these past few months in a way which your kids will understand and which empowers them to resist socially weaponized weakness? Well, one of the things I've always put out there is you cannot replace or you cannot have somebody just refrain from doing bad things, from having bad habits. You do not just stop or cease or command bad habits to end. They are replaced with good habits. In a similar vein, I do not need, in a primary sense, to address the individual goings-on in society to my kids. What I have done since they were born, my wife and I have done since they were born, is install a mindset of strength. A functional mindset that's based on being robust, being assertive, confident, aggressive where appropriate, curious, respectful. I've invested so much time and energy in my kids into what they should be. I found that very rarely am I having conversation with them about what they should not be, right? So each one of my kids, the older ones more than the younger ones, have already told me they wanted to be half a dozen things. I want to be a Navy SEAL. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a police officer. I want to run a business. I want to be a UFC fighter. Like, all of that is just par for the course, which on a side note makes me, shake my head when I hear about parents listening to their 7-year-old child about being a transgender. It's normal for kids to butt up their current identity, which is always evolving, with the the backdrop of society, and finding out what path am I going to take, who am I going to be, what am I going to do, to have the perspective of a child again, right? So it's important, I think, as parents, that we don't sit there and try to put out fires, but we make them fireproof, to begin with. Number one, lead by example. A good friend of mine, Greg Nelson, an incredible martial artist, very well respected in the MMA community. I think his more popular claim to fame is he was one of Brock Lesnar's coaches. I once asked him, he and I were on the same board at an event, and I asked him, I said, at the time, his son was a very, very successful high school wrestler. I believe his daughter was a competitive gymnast. And they just look like great kids, like anytime he shared them doing something or something, they just look like solid kids. And my kids were much younger at the time. And I asked him, I'm like, what's the secret? How do you get these kids, so squared away? And he said, you got to model the behavior. You got to lead by example. They're watching you, and you got to always pay attention to that. And I share that advice. I pass that advice on to you guys. I explain, why family is important, why strength is important, why, not being emotional where it isn't appropriate is important. How logic sort of fits into a discussion, and not everything is a personal attack on who you are. Like, I explain these things because they need those things explained to them. Not because I'm trying to disarm some sort of, reaction that they had to some other information coming from media or wherever, To that point, another thing that I've said more generally with kids is you want to give them the answers to questions that you don't want them discovering the answers for themselves. Because children do not have, they have an incredible level of curiosity, but they do not have an incredible level of processing logically information that's put in front of them. That's something that's going to be developing. So I would focus on the process, but sometimes, they're going to get the answers. They're going to get the answers first. When my 5-year-old daughter wants ice cream for dinner, I'm not going to sit here and give her a bunch of nutritional information and hope she makes the right choice. No, eventually that'll be what, the devices she's left to. But in the beginning, there's going to be a level of authority in establishing, the behaviors and habits and whatnot that we abide by in our home. Right? So, Irish Paul, again, congratulations. And I hope that, answers your question. Basically the world's always going to hell in a handbasket in some way, shape, or form. But if they're focusing on what's strong, then you're doing your job. All right. So next question. Stand by. Okay, I got this question from a guy named Mike. And there's 2 questions from 2 guys named Mike. So I have Mike and I have the other Mike. So this is from Mike. Do you make your kids wear masks where required? So, I could be, witty and a wise ass. The real answer you're looking for is no. My kids aren't wearing masks to appease any of the, what I see as, political theater that's going on. And it's not just, this is one of the false dichotomy, scenarios that I've talked about before. It's not because of all the studies that show how harmful prolonged mask wearing and mask use could be. All of that's valid. But that's not what I hang my hat on. I don't do it because I know they're not being required legally for appropriate reasons, for accurate reasons, truthful reasons, moral reasons, scientific reasons. It's bullshit. It's political theater. I'm not going to have my, me nor my family leveraged to some political ambitious piece of garbage's end. So do I make my kids wear a mask where required? I could say, well, if I require it, then they'll wear one, and that's the only requirement that I would follow. But I mean, the real answer that you're looking for is no, I don't. I don't make them wear masks. Now this is from Stefan or Stefan. It's Stefan. Maybe it's an STE fan. I don't know. I'll say Stefan. Make it sound European. Has your strength decreased with your recent weight drop? So I don't want to presume that you are referring to my physical strength. So if you're talking about my strength in general, I would say that I am at a net positive at this point. My willpower, my mental strength, my ability to focus, all pain is training. And I have gone through some training this last month and change. Now, my physical strength, well, I'm down, I think, 27 pounds. Yeah, you're going to lose some weight. I mean, excuse me, you're going to lose some physical strength when you lose 27 pounds. In terms of absolute strength. Now, the strength of my cardiovascular system. The other day, I hiked 6 miles. Had I tried to do that 2 months prior, they might have fucking found me in the dirt 6 months from now. So it's definitely a transformation. My ability to lift heavy weights, of course, is going to be compromised to some extent, at least in the short term. But I'm also dealing with a herniated disc and a fractured elbow. So it's kind of also hard to lift when I'm mitigating both of those pretty significant injuries. The majority of the physical activity that I've done is walking and hiking. The rest of it is really PT and mobility work and other forms of therapy that I'm using to just get myself, back up to speed. Now this is from the other Mike. The other Mike asks, do you predict U.S. civil violence where this election cycle is concerned? Do I predict U.S. civil violence where this election cycle is concerned? Well, I don't know if you've been paying attention, other Mike, but, there's been violence all over the country for a whole slew of reasons. There has been violence over people disagreeing on what's going on with the pandemic. There's been violence over people disagreeing whether or not Black Lives Matter is Black Lives Matters is an organization or some sort of moral proclamation. There's been violence over people just, I guess, having the expanded bandwidth of opportunity to commit violence due to the dropping of the multiple balls around the country by heads of cities and states. So there's been violence all over the place. Do I, following up, do I expect violence to escalate as we get closer to the election? Absolutely. There's nothing that I see right now that's showing me it isn't. One of the big criticisms that Trump is facing right now is his inaction, where a lot of the, violence is concerned. The whole bunch of reasons, all ways that he's being inactive. But one of them, a major, example of his inaction that he's getting criticism for is, things like that CHOP place being taken over in Seattle. Right now, the amount of crime that's going on in New York City. Mayor de Blasio just gave an interview where he cited how public gatherings are banned because of health reasons, with COVID. But now's not the time to stop Black Lives Matter protests. And it's like that is where we are right now. And with Trump, A lot of people just want him, it would certainly be simpler if he would just drop the hammer on these situations. I don't think that it's that easy. I don't think that it is that simple. I think leading up to an election, having the federal government, superseding authority to basically manage, different situations. I don't know the legality of it. I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that it's going to be a very, very powerful opportunity for people looking to leverage things against Trump. And it sucks. It's almost disgusting that we're in a situation where it may be a good thing that our president isn't protecting our citizens, because that may enable him to get elected and be our president for another 4 years. But this is the situation we're in. Again, we can't look at it as a false dichotomy and just say Trump should fix this. He didn't. Oh well, he's got to go. It's a little bit more complicated than that. A little bit more involved than that. I'm not somebody who sits here and makes excuses about what the people I support. There's no perfect person out there. There's no perfect candidate. And when you define a candidate by his weaknesses, by his inconsistencies, you're missing the actual conversation, which is, well, what's going to be the benefit? There's going to be bad aspects to everybody, but ultimately, when it comes down to right now in the U.S., who are you going to vote for, Biden and Trump? I think most people, the majority of people, understand you're voting for much more than just the individual men. Talking about Trump's deficiencies and his moral conundrums and his instances, his viral, instances of going at people on social media. It's like you could sit here all day and find problems and mistakes with who Trump is as a person, even what he's done as a president. But ultimately, we're not electing somebody to be president so they could be mistake free, so they could be this sort of religious level of morality. We're electing these people to be president because we want them to basically do the job that they're going to do that the other person isn't. I remember in the 2016 election, I was a big early supporter of Rand Paul. I supported Ted Cruz, not over Trump, but I was a supporter of Ted Cruz. But one of the things that I honestly believed then, and I still believe now, is that, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. I don't think either one of them had the balls to stand up to, what was going to be waiting for them once they've gotten elected. And I think whereas Trump has certainly stumbled on many different occasions when it came to pushing back against either being misled, misinformed, or, just pressured in some way, I think he is probably the most driven candidate, we've seen in I don't know how long, in terms of he's going to do what he wants to do for whatever reasons, be they ego reasons, political reasons, patriotic reasons, whatever it is. He's going to be able to stand up to a lot more than I just saw those other people being able to stand up to. So, when we talk about Biden, I mean, at this point, is anybody really going to debate? Does anybody really want to debate that he is a functional candidate and that he would be an effective, functional president? I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's unfair of me to say, but it's just hard for me to take somebody seriously that thinks that Biden is actually going to be a functional, effective president, that he even has that capability. What I see is the people who just have an emotional association with Trump, and they just lose their fucking minds whenever Trump's mentioned, and it's really, anything but Trump. That's who they're voting for. If it's Biden, so be it. The other people that don't want Trump to be elected are the people who are probably going to benefit most directly from Biden, being the president. He's you know, did you really just can somebody really legitimately make the case that he is not being controlled by powers in his party that are much further left than he is? It's just, I don't even think it's debatable at this point, you know. I know a lot of people, you know, it's funny, you know, where I grew up in the Bronx, and I grew up with a lot of people who were told that rich white people, you know, were the devil. They were the devil. And, you know, people were poor because other people were rich. And there are so many black people and brown people in this neighborhood because there are so many white people in those better neighborhoods. These are the things we were raised being told. This was the narrative that we all, you know, were raised hearing. So when I look at people that I grew up with, you know, that are still espousing this hatred towards Trump, you know, I know it's emotional based. I know it's not fact based. I know they are, you know, succumbing to the pressures and narratives that their peers are exposing them to. I know that they haven't done research and factual research on what the Trump presidency, what the Trump administration has meant, you know, for the minority community, being whether it's black or every shade of brown. But I understand, you know, where they are mentally. I don't agree with them. I don't think what they're doing is in any way helpful. I think it's a poor representation of who they are to do that. But I do understand them. You know, I do understand that it's very difficult for somebody who was raised in a just uber liberal environment to detach himself enough to be able to gain that observer's perspective that lets them look at things objectively and then sort of clean the slate of opinion and premises and reestablish them after they've gotten that information. It's difficult to do. I think, you know, my own path of doing that was probably driven more by my business success than it was any sort of philosophical epiphany. I didn't sit down and go, wait a minute, is all this that I believe and all these things that I support, all these things that I react to, are they all true? Are they all appropriate? Are they all accurate? Are they consistent? You know, and it's, you know, it's funny. I'll have more liberal-minded people now tell me what needs to happen, you know, for people in the hood to thrive and survive. And, you know, I'm somebody that came from the hood. I'm somebody that like climbed the ladder. I've done it. You know, why isn't anybody listening to somebody like me who is, you know, my father's Puerto Rican, my mother's white. I got the last name Garcia. I've been brown enough in enough situations that I've had to navigate getting this chip off my shoulder and find a way to be functional. And, you know, I've spoken about this at length on other occasions. But when I'm looking at individuals now who they want to sort of, you know, give a speech, they want to share this great wisdom that came out of some corner of their ass about how people in the hood, you know, how they should get, what they should do, what the process looks like for them to get out of those situations. It's like, I don't need you to tell me a fucking thing. I've been there. I've done that. You know, I've had enough business success to understand that how you feel and how you feel about what other people feel and think about you, you know, that the color of ink that you sign your contracts probably has more to do with your success than your feelings where those things are concerned. You know, it's just there was a time where the feedback that we got, the harsh feedback that kept us honest when it came to personal strength and the need to develop one's personal power, that used to come from the external stresses. And the external stresses used to be primarily natural, right? They didn't have faces, they didn't have identities, they didn't have the sort of ability to build a relationship like we tend to do today, where we could blame the police, we could blame the president, we could blame the rich guy, we could blame, the people on the other side of the track, so to speak. There are a lot of faces we could blame today. Well, people, I guess, if you look back in history, people might have looked at you funny if, you were yelling at the snow for ruining, your property, or yelling at the rain for, destroying something you owned, or like, it's very difficult these days to have that same feedback, whereby people's tendency isn't to just build a venomous association with somebody else. There are just too many people to blame, because there's so many people in between an individual and nature nowadays. But if we look at the laws that we all learned, our ancestors have, we wouldn't be here otherwise. If we're looking at, those laws, those attributes that we had to develop, all of them still hold true. They're all still exactly what we should be doing. The application may have changed. The application may have evolved, but if you look at a farmer who's got to get up and take care of his animals and his fields, his crops, his opinion of, what that responsibility entails isn't important. His opinion on, the attitude or mood of the people associated with him, like none of that. You got to get up and you got to do your work. And there is an instant feedback loop that is provided to a farmer, when he does that. You get it right, and you get to literally reap what you sow. You get it wrong, you go hungry, you fail. You need to find an alternative means of survival. There used to be a time where the feedback was just so pure and so natural, it really didn't give people the opportunity to get in their own way. Well, nowadays, that's not the case. If you have somebody that's growing up in the inner city, which I have, right? And you have people explaining to you how the system's out to get you, how these people don't care about you, how, we have to fight for our rights because these other people would see us, ignored, and all these, like, you can't, I don't want to say blame. It's no mystery how these people who grow up in these liberal, ecosystems grow up to just espouse all of the same nonsensical talking points that the politicians of their parties do. It makes sense. It's why it's so important to do things that remind us of what attributes are actually valuable in nature. The guys who do high-level martial arts, the guys who do extreme sports, the guys who hunt, even, camp to some extent, like fish. You could do things that you come in direct contact with nature, and you will see all of those attributes that prove themselves productive. When we look at, I think it was, what was I talking about? Maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the NBA and how, we almost dismiss it because it's so obvious. And I've never really heard a truly impressive leftist rebuttal, to this analogy. But when we look at the NBA, the people that make it to the NBA are the people who are the best basketball players. And their ethnicities don't matter. Their upbringing doesn't matter. Their income doesn't matter. The economic status of their family doesn't matter. It's literally how well can you play the game. And if you look at an owner, they want to win championships. They want to make money. Maybe not in that order. But they're going to get people who allow them to become winning franchises. They're going to get people that allow fans to become enamored, to build these associations. And one of the pretty consistent things that entails that is winning. If you win all the time, you are a winner. People like to be next to winners. They like to be associated with winners. It's important that when we look at other situations, unlike basketball and the NBA, that we still apply those same rules and understand that unless we've managed to screw it up, it has evolved in just that fashion. I remember a couple of years ago, there was this debate about, girls and women in the sciences. The science fields, the STEM fields, right? Science, technology, and then EM stands for something. Somebody looked that up. But, why is it, if we take the politics out of it for a second and pretend we're just a couple of buddies just trying to rationalize why that is. I just find it hard that if somebody's being honest, I find it hard to believe that they're going to say the reason why there are so few women in science is because the men don't want them to be there. I just don't see that as being the case. I don't see why, you could have these individuals who've innovated things, engineering and mathematics. Thanks, Mike. And Brad. Guys, hooking me up. Appreciate it. Let me just look right now. Who we got here? What's up, Casey? Rockstar's in the house. What's up, Elliot? Big Darrow. What's going on, brother man? So, when we're looking at that situation, it's, science is boring. Science is kind of nerdy. And I say boring in a general sense, Science is something that I don't see the overwhelming majority of women to have an interest in the first place. And then what happens in a woman's scientific career, and now I'm just speculating, right? We're a couple of buddies hanging out around a campfire. We're just talking about why there aren't as many women in the science fields, and I just can't see, once a woman has a child, which is kind of important, right? That our women have children. I can't see how whatever innovation or work that they were pursuing would, in large numbers, fall on the same scale of importance and priority as their family at that point. I don't see a need to have some sort of devious behind the curtain plot, when we're looking at something like why less women are in the STEM fields. Similarly, nurses, the nursing industry, why are there more women there? Because nurses are nurturers. Women are large number by design, more of a nurturing archetype, compared to men. It's just what has allowed us to thrive as a species. Having women to an irrational level commit to taking care of this newborn is good for the race, the human race. Before anybody starts some shit. It just makes sense. Again, I needn't to have this sort of devious, operator, just manipulating things behind the scene when I look at why there are more women in nursing than men. All of the charges of there being bias and discrimination inherent in those particular fields, it's all political theater. Somebody, picked a fight or designed a fight that they could win because they get argued, they can win arguments and get people to support them. But to me, it's been baffling why people have to make these things so polarizing. A couple of years ago, I think it was Jordan Peterson that brought to the forefront the contrast or the discussion of the contrast between equality and equity, right? And, to make something equitable, meaning that the outcome needs to be distributed evenly, it's such a curious way that you would have to design a system to make sure that it remains equitable. It's, there should be as many women as men in the STEM fields. Well, why are we just bifurcating by gender? Why not, height? You can see how short I look on my fucking camera. I'm a short dude. Like, I could certainly benefit if we have some height equality legislation. You know, but why is it that it was trivially chosen that gender needs to be the thing that we need to argue and look for equity in? It's just such an illogical position to start from. You know, like, sure, now the flavor of the month is race, you know, and black people, they're dying by the individual units every year. By police, right? Unarmed black people shot and killed by police last year, I think was 9 people. 9 unarmed black people shot and killed by police. Of the 9, 6 of them were attacking the cop that shot them. Oh, it's like, yeah, we have a lot of people now, and there's just so many variables involved. Like, what is the biggest, I think, if I had to, you know, assess the mindsets of people that are so supportive of this Black Lives Matter movement and this, you know, we need to defend our blackness. Now's the time to overcome all the oppression. Like, there's a reason why you're doing that, whether you're black or you're what they call somebody an ally. You ain't got shit going on. That's the only reason. You have nothing to fucking do. I made a point a couple of days ago in one of my videos. It's like you guys that do nothing but, you know, look to complain about, you know, oppression and this and that and the other thing. Have you ever had a day where you didn't have time to do that? It's like, yeah, because those days you were busy doing something that actually fucking mattered. There's just something to be said for understanding the difference between not having an equal opportunity as structured by the state and not having an equal opportunity when compared to your fellow citizens. Those are 2 different discussions. I grew up, I love playing basketball. I'm 5'5". I was not going to make it to the NBA. I could have no complaint to the government that the NBA allowed tall people in at a oppressive, discriminatory level, because I'd be laughed out of any office I decided to spout that nonsense in. At that point, somebody would tell me, well, listen, you were just born 5'5", like these people are born 6'5", and they have an athleticism and a skill set that you don't, and it's not your fault, but it's certainly not the government's fault either. You know, you'll have things that you're good at, and that would be the conversation that would be had with me if somebody gave a shit enough to have it. But we look at society now, and, well, these kids were born with silver spoons in their mouths. So? Did they take all your spoons and melt them down to make one silver spoon? Like, how does this affect you? What does this mean for you? You know, I think Jay-Z right now is a billionaire. Jay-Z, who grew up in Brooklyn, was like a fucking crack dealer. You know, morally, you know, a piece of shit growing up. Now he's a billionaire. Why is it that you think that happens? Like, we literally have had a black president, half black, but I said the other day we round up, right? We round up. We have a black president. We have a black Supreme Court justice. We've had black governors, mayors, police chiefs, attorney generals. Where is the corner of the country that black people not only have, you know, aren't allowed to go, but haven't already been? You know, yeah, but this guy called me a nigger. So? Yeah, but now, mind you, I got thrown out of the dormitories, right, in college, because some guy called me a spick, and I remember I hit him. and I hit him pretty hard. I broke his face. And I remember sitting in the office of the campus police precinct, and they're asking me what I did, and I told them, and they said, well, why'd you hit him? I said, because he called me a spick. And they said, like, and that's it? And I said, well, that's not enough. At 18 years old, I legitimately thought if somebody called me a name, I was allowed to assault them. Now, mind you, this wasn't in the Bronx. I went to school in Connecticut, and it was the continuation of my eyes being open to the way the world actually fucking worked. But we have people who want to become dysfunctional. They will volunteer to become dysfunctional because somebody has expressed an opinion. It's the ultimate magic show. I can go right now and let's say I just had I saw a bunch of cops and I see some black guys, right? Cops, black guys. And let's say this is pre, current nonsense. Just say it's a year ago. And I went up to the black guys, let's just say, and I whispered, you're all a bunch of worthless nigger monkeys. You're all useless monkey niggers. You should be slaves. I don't think the second sentence would have reached its end before they tried to jump me. And you would have a bunch of police that would observe me say something to a bunch of guys and them, respond by assaulting me. They're going to go to jail. As they should. Because hearing something you don't want to hear has never in our history been strong enough to harm somebody's rights. They're just words. To my earlier question that was asked of me by Irish Paul, he asked, how do I basically steer my kids away from, the nonsense that's out there? And I said, you steer them toward something else. When I talk to my children about, insults, the idea of insults, I explain to them that they are magic. They're magic words. But an individual's magic only works on you if you believe in it. And my children and I have sessions where we insult one another, right? We snapping on each other and we make fun of each other and we have a laugh about it. And throughout the years, it has built in them a resilience to being triggered by the magic of other people. But here we have grown men who can't seem to avoid that. Grown men and women. We have grown men who appreciate, encourage other people to feel pity for them. I find that to be disgusting. I made the meme the other day, or maybe a post something, I don't know, I put it somewhere. And I said it's frustrating when you're debating with somebody whether or not they are capable. Like, if I'm having a conversation with a black guy who's blaming everything under the sun on why he can't achieve anything, and I'm sitting here trying to tell him that he's capable and he can do it, and he's arguing with me that he can't because of circumstances, it's like, it's tempting. I admit it's tempting to just go, you know what, you're right. Because people you've never seen were enslaved by people you've never met. You are incapable of being a productive adult. And you're right. Society should take care of you. I mean, those people that are crying racism at every corner, is that what you want? Is that what you want from... It's very hard to ask people to take care of you and to pity you, and then expect those people to truly believe that you are worth anything. They might say it, but, it's like, like messing up a kid's hair, going, yeah, you're the toughest, you're the strongest. Go get him, buddy. It's like we want to encourage that type of positive thinking, but obviously we know that this person's, a little bit less than on, on the up and up. I don't understand why people think it's okay to have people feel sorry for you. I'd be disgusted. It's like, hey man, do you need some money? You need some help with your bills? Go fuck yourself. I don't fucking need your money. Now understand, I have a wife, I have 4 kids. If I really needed money, I would do everything in my power before I had to ask somebody else to loan me money. Because it would be a loan at that point, right? And it's just a pride and a dignity in who I am as an individual. I'm not even claiming this, this right for men. Like women too, I know like this. My wife's like that. It's like, why are you so eager to have people agree with you that you can't cope, that you're incapable, that because of what happened way back when, you're doomed? Even when there's example, let's say like, even if an individual actually believed that, it's like, well, there was a black president, black celebrities, black millionaires, billionaires, Supreme Court justice, like all of these prominent black people. It's like, it's okay. You could do it. You could do it. It ain't going to be easy. It ain't going to be easy. Let's see what's going on. Casey says, but MC, I'd argue. Casey, are you going to argue with me? She says, I'd argue that nursing involves a fair amount of science, not just a nurturing behavior. Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you look at, the amount of education it takes to be a nurse, compared to the amount of education it takes to be a doctor, there's a difference. There's a distinction to be made. I know a buddy of mine that I was actually locked up with. He was an adult. I was in the youth block of the county jail that I was in, and I had seen him years later, and he had just become a nurse. He had to be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. But he had just finished school and became a nurse. And I was incredibly proud of him. And I got to say, this dude walked with his shoulders back and his head up because he was a nurse. And, the 2 things that I thought of, number one is I couldn't be prouder, of him and what he put himself through, because I saw at one point in his life where he was. That was the first thought. The second thought was, if I'm ever in the hospital, I hope he doesn't come in to change my fucking bedpan. This fucking 6'2", 230-pound black dude. Like, yeah, are there any other nurses on call right now? Oh my God. So it goes both ways, I think, the nurturing. Elliot says, what about women coal miners? Like, I've never met one. I heard they exist. I've never met one. Casey says, agreed, but saying women aren't as interested in science and then saying more women than men in nursing is a bit conflicting. I don't think so, because what happens is you have the entire set of, let's say, STEM fields. Nursing is a small one, a subset of that. So if you have, let's say, a 1,000 units of STEM fields, right? Or 1,000 jobs, 1,000 STEM jobs, and only 50 of them are nursing, right? The rest of them are other ones. And in those 50 slots for nursing, there are 40 women and 10 men. If there aren't any other women in any other STEM fields, just to make my example easily understood for everybody, that would mean out of 1,000 jobs, only 40 of them are women. Yet, 80% of the nursing field would be women. So that's how you can get that without being conflicting. I think you may be misunderstood. You meant to say confusing, Casey. Not conflicting, confusing. But I'm here for you. Elliot says, universities have a hard time getting female STEM applicants. Who knows? Ike, big Ike. He says, oh shit, someone stole your beard. I'm not going to say it was a black guy. All right, Casey says, that is the perfect point, and I wish I know exactly what you were saying. What I said that you're saying is the perfect point, but I agree. Anthony, what's up, Anthony? He says Jordan Peterson likes to point out that men like things, whereas women like people, which is why they seek out jobs in nursing, not engineering. So, and I agree with the sentiment. But again, here's one of those things where if we get into an aggressive debate on a topic, we have to sort of populate the conversation with things that disconnect us from who we are as individuals. Obviously, that doesn't discount empirical data supporting a position. But what I'm saying, or what I'm asking, do we really need data to understand why men would like things and women would like people more? Like, is that an assertion that we doubt, at its face value? You know what I mean? So if that is not something that we doubt, sure, maybe we're biased, maybe we're, falling under the delusion of what's been installed. That's fine, that's valid. But I just don't think it's a tough sell to get the average person to agree with the sentiment, as quoted, by Jordan Peterson, men like things, whereas women like people, right? As an example. Casey says that you can't expect people to believe you're a very victim and also tell them you believe you can do it. Right. Okay. I agree. That was a good point that I made. Oh, math. I got you on the math. Math is one of the few things that I got going for me. Carla Price. Jeff and I are liking this topic. I don't like many people. You are preaching to the choir. You know that, Carla. I am not somebody who's interested in broadening my social circles. Although I will say, this is something that I think gets misinterpreted with me and my content quite often. I've been called everything from a white supremacist to a Nazi to a homophobe. Like white supremacist, I mean, that means something. And what that means is not what I believe. It's become watered down, just become this like vague, broad brush insult nowadays, but it's supposed to mean something. And, when you are a white supremacist, you are somebody who believes that the white race is superior in a general sense than every other race. But I think you also have to be white. I don't know. Do you have to be white in order to be a white supremacist? Like, can a black guy be a white supremacist? I know they called Candace Owens a Nazi, right? So who knows? Fucking the rules of clown world. But white supremacist, I'm not. Homophobe, right? Homophobe. I'm not a fucking homophobe because I've never met a gay person I'm scared of. And I don't think there's one scary one sort of lurking around somewhere. And I'm trying to avoid meeting that person. No, I'm not a homophobe. But the point I'm trying to make, maybe taking too long to make it, is I often get accused of being somebody who hates everybody and doesn't like everybody and thinks, we should just, I should be with my tribe and fuck everybody else. Everybody else is my enemy. And like, no, I don't think that at all. I think that if we're functionally looking at what tribe represents to an individual, it's certainly a group of people who are connected directly to your ability to survive. And for that reason, mainly, they deserve priority in the investment of your energies, of your resources. However, the people who are outside of that innermost circle, the people who are in those, those expanding concentric circles of network, an individual should always have a formula to build an alliance with anybody they come into contact with, right? In my power program, the Alliance Codes, I talk about this at great length. There's no reason to make enemies of people who could be allies. By the way, there isn't just one level of alliance. It's not, either you're my best friend or I don't know you, or you're either my best friend or you're my enemy. Again, these are all false dichotomies. We have a relationship with our siblings that is more significant and prioritized than our relationship with our mailman, which is greater than our relationship with somebody we see in a supermarket parking lot, that we give them, the right of way. There are different levels of alliance. I would consider all of those examples of alliances, but obviously all at differing, varying levels of commitment and intensity. So I'm somebody that wants to get along with anybody I come into contact with. I don't want to get along with everybody because I don't have the time nor resources to even connect with everybody. So I don't mind, putting my opinion out there. I don't mind disagreeing with people. I don't mind the awkward situations that that so many people have told me that I've given them stomach aches because of some of the awkward conversations I've had in their presence. I will always say the thing that I want to say, but as a general principle, a philosophy of my own, I am always trying to build alliances. I was, I told you guys a story of me going to go and get my my PRP stem cell shot in my elbow, and drove 2.5 hours. And the lady tells me after I'm waiting there a half an hour, in addition to the ride, that you need a mask to come back, to be seen. And I debated my point. I pretty much knew that it wasn't going to happen. She seemed pretty fired up, but she was also just rude. She had this extra sauce on her energy that I understand why. I get that. I don't look like the fucking Easter Bunny. I get that. At the time, I might have had one of my fucking shirts on. What shirt did I have on? I had the shirt "Never Apologize for Being a Man" on. And I get there's all of this. And I know she's on guard. I know she's ready for a fight. I get all that. I was super polite though, It was my buddy's referral that had sent me there, and I didn't want to make any waves and, fuck up his alliance with this dude. It just wasn't going to happen, so I just kept it moving. But up until that point where the whole mask thing became a, non-negotiable, I had the receptionist laughing. I had another one of the assistants laughing, just making jokes. I'm trying to connect. I'm trying to make everybody an advocate for me and my cause in a general sense. Because if it's the same amount of energy to do one or the other, why not do the one where you actually get a return on the investment? So I'm not somebody that thinks we need to hate people. We need to, fuck that person. I hope he dies. I hope, it's just a waste of fucking energy. I can, with the same breath, however, say that we should never be wasting resources on individuals who will never give a return on the investment. And if we decide to do so, the only argument that makes sense to support that being logical is if there's some sort of catharsis in giving away that energy. Give the bum $20. Why? Because I'm helping the bum? No, because you feel better about giving him $20. It's to make you feel good. You know, so if there's nothing else that I want from my philosophy, it's that people look at me and say he's consistent. You don't need to agree with me, but the hypocrisies, the contradictions, I admit, you know, they're there, you know, but they're not there because I want them to be there. They're only there if they're there because I haven't found them yet. I enjoy being around strong people, having strong conversations, even conversations that admittedly make me emotional sometimes out of frustration, because I need that. I need that to grow. I need that to improve. You know, talking about earlier on, the first question I got about, you know, how do you help kids deal with all this nonsense going on? Well, you have to give them something to orient themselves toward. You can't define what's to be their relationship with the world by giving them examples of everything to orient themselves away from. You have to tell them where to go. To quote, you know, my buddy Greg Nelson, how do you do that? You show them the way. You model the behavior. You walk the walk. All right, so my kids will see me on one end, you know, being very cordial and polite and funny with somebody, you know, in public, but the situation just unravels a different way. They'll see me look at somebody like I'm ready to fucking put them in half if the situation warrants that. But it's not because of any emotional position or mood or state that I find myself in. I've worked hard to steer myself away from that. I've done the work necessary to be able to conduct myself in a way that's congruent with my philosophies, right, and my belief systems. You know, but just because an individual doesn't understand, how could you do this thing and then do the other? Well, I'm glad you asked. Do you want to discuss it? Let's discuss it. I've had conversations with strong people in my life where I was completely committed to my position, but open-minded to have the discussion. At the end of the discussion, I got shut down. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. I'm wrong. That's happened more times than I can remember throughout my life. My mother used to have a great phrase when I was in elementary school, and, you know, I just didn't want to hear anybody's opinion. She used to call me strong and wrong. Strong and wrong, Justin. And I've worked my entire life to not reduce who I am to that position. You know, this is my position. Well, why? Because I'll fuck you up. Good luck trying to get me to change it, asshole. I'll smash you. Like, it's not a way to be. It's not a way to be at all. You know? Elliot says, ex-wife is a scientist, says it was tough to get women away from the social sciences versus STEM when they held recruiting events, gender studies versus agricultural sciences. Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Big Jim Yankowski, what's up, brother man? Jose Killshot Rivera, you look much sexier without a beard. So did you watch the whole video and say, I'm going to try and come up with the gayest fucking thing that I could post on MC's live video as possible? I don't think you did, because if you did that, you probably wouldn't have to fix your spelling error like you did. Daryl says, got to go 1 week to PressureCon. That's right, looking forward to the power. Thanks, MC. No, thank you, Daryl. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you at PressureCon. We got 1 week to PressureCon, and I'm looking forward to it. Those of you that are going, you know, we're going to have probably the most epic time at a PressureCon yet. I couldn't think of a better time, a more valuable time than now for men, like-minded men, to be at an event, to share ideas and whatnot. Those of you who know nothing about it, don't worry about it. All right, guys, I think I'm going to call it a video. I appreciate you guys. If you guys have questions, you know, just send them to me. A couple of guys did last time. I decided to do this video because of that. But I always appreciate it. And, you know, you guys that are watching the video, even if you don't agree with me on everything, you know, I do appreciate the time. even that gay shit that Killshot wrote. Killshot. That's from a paintballing, by the way, guys. He's never actually shot something and killed it. But I digress. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Pressure to power.